It took American Horror Story 11 long seasons to finally achieve its goal of becoming one of the most terrifying horror programs to grace our TVs. It's about time. From what we've seen over the past few years, it definitely had the potential. But the producers are ready to raise the bar even more with their new season. Season 11 has emerged as one of the most popular seasons to exist in the AHS franchise, all credits going to its creators Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk. Do you know why? It's because the theme hits a little too close to home for some.
So, she eventually came around.
Well, it got worse before it got better.
This season is set in NYC, the Big Apple itself, and is centered around the LGBT community of the 1980s. Compared to the previous seasons, American Horror Story NYC takes place during real-life history as opposed to a made-up world. I mean New York. Couldn't get more American than that. Now, in this season, there's an unknown illness that plagues the gay community, and it's something that is even more terrifying than monsters and witches. If you think about it closely, there was only one big epidemic that hit the community hard, even until now. We're talking about AIDS. But before you misunderstand, we're not saying that this was an exclusive illness to those in the LGBT community. But looking at history, a lot of the people who contracted the AIDS virus back then, majority of them were part of the LGBT community. It was a very scary time. Many didn't know what the virus was, what it did, or how it was transmitted. One thing's for sure, it was a death sentence to be diagnosed. The stigma of AIDS stopped a lot of people from seeking help from medical professionals, or even talking about it with their loved ones in fear of being outcasted and shamed. A truly sad and scary time. It makes me very thankful for modern medicine. Back to American Horror Story. This creepy sickness, widely sweeping the streets of New York, bears a striking resemblance to AIDS, with a lot of symptoms being similar, especially Kaposi sarcoma. Now you may think this is no big deal, but it is. Because as we all know, the show has always leaned on the supernatural and has now embraced factual events in this season. What we mean by that is, they're embracing the real horrors that the gay community faced in the 1980s. So don't you get it? The fact that they chose this story fully embraces the American Horror Story narrative. Plus, they also made it all the more gruesome and horrific. So what else makes season 11 of American Horror Story even better than the previous seasons? For one, the current season makes a lot of effort to keep the fans and viewers immersed throughout the details. Remember that anecdote, God is in the details? That's exactly what they're doing. Pretty crafty, right? The directors have chosen to display the different subcultures that were present at the time in New York, adding to the reality of the story. How have they managed to achieve this? We will see the ever-popular leather clubs from the 80s, and even the multiple homosexual results on the notorious Fire Island. You see, these places are pretty vulnerable to outside forces who want to destroy them. For example, we have Mr. Whiteley this season who is absolutely hell-bent on creating a monster out of human body parts. Frankenstein, anyone?
Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Or if not Mr. Whiteley, the nameless and deadly virus. Now you may be wondering, why is it scarier to use real-life events rather than using supernatural events that have been relied on in the show? We're getting to that. This is a fresh new take on the series, since they've branded themselves to everything and anything supernatural like witches, ghosts, monsters, etc. You get the picture, right? But now, they draw horror from the mundane. The everyday life in the crowded city of New York, plus some issues that you and I might face on a daily basis. We're talking about homophobia, racism, police brutality, and even medical negligence.
You think I might kill you one day? Yeah, I think you've got it in you.
You've seen these things take place at least once or twice in your life, right? Grounding the horror of the show in these things makes it more realistic, scarier, and even impactful. Since even you or I can relate to it. Without a doubt, this new approach American Horror Story NYC is taking is definitely a welcome change to this horror anthology. Not only that, it also rectifies the mistakes in double feature. Since they ditched the old school formula of using the supernatural as villains, it's both refreshing and terrifying how they're able to incorporate the real-world horrors into the series. Without a doubt, Season 11 of American Horror Story demonstrates how reality is not only scarier, but it's also more terrifying than fiction by referencing the actual atrocities of American history, particularly as they've affected members of the LGBTQ+ community. But going back a few seasons of AHS, we have one question that's been bugging our minds. What happened to Kit's children after Asylum? We know this was too long ago, but we can't help it. In Double Feature, they tried to explain the big mystery surrounding his children, but we wouldn't be here if they explained it properly, right? Back to Double Feature. It tries to tie and connect the AHS multiverse, but it had the opposite effect by only worsening things.
Locate a body. A body? It was pretty messed up in the crash. Can't tell what it is.
We got to admit, though, they did answer some mysteries. But for some, they made it all the more confusing.
And now we have ourselves a new question. Why? Why is it here?
Now, Asylum has one of the most eccentric themes in all of AHS, their church and aliens. So let's make it quick. Kit Walker had two love interests in this season. One was Alma, and the other was Grace. Long story short, both of them were abducted and were impregnated by aliens. But surprisingly, both women gave birth to normal children, Thomas and Julia. How does that work? Surely they should have had some extra fingers or something. In their later years, Sister Jude and Lana Winters helped raise them and became their godmothers. They went on to become successful and never to be heard of again. Until Double Feature. Now, in its second part, it was revealed that the aliens' home planet was dying. As a last-ditch effort to save themselves, they made a deal with President Eisenhower to abduct 5,000 Americans, and in return, they'd offer alien technology.
5,000 people a year. It's a small number whose sacrifice ensures the safety of 190 million Americans.
And with the technology that we are getting in exchange, we will dominate the world.
Which is a pretty fair deal in my opinion. So back to these abductions. It was their way to assimilate here on Earth. So yes, they were crossbreeding if you look at it one way.
What ever-loving Christ is this?
What have I done?
And the failed human-alien hybrids were killed. As for Kit's children, they were both successful, which is why they were allowed to live. But for some, well, they look a little nastier and crustier than most. But Double Feature also showed hybrids that looked more alien than human. So I guess not all of them were killed after all. It's also important to know that these hybrids were believed to change the world, but Thomas and Julia weren't even mentioned at all. So yeah, there's still a bit of confusion on that part. Or maybe the writers simply forgot about them? Who knows? What are your theories? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching today's video,